Welcome, everybody, to Thursday night. This is Club Fantasy's Dynasty After Party. I'm your host, Joshua Hudson. Joining me, as always, Mr. Joel Wirth. As mentioned, it is Thursday night. Take a little break from Thursday night football and come join us on a stream because we're going to be talking some Dynasty value changes, some risers, fallers. Let's get into it. Let me just pull up the other side of things. Here we go. I got so much going on in my headphones, like it was driving me up a freaking wall for a hot minute. Okay. Anyway, Joel, how are we doing this Thursday night, buddy?
Good. Yeah. Another Thursday night, another pretty mad game. So yeah, like you said, why not put the game on the TV and watch them Dynasty After Party?
There you go. As mentioned in the intro, I'm Joshua Hudson at the One Hudsonian across the socials, and that is Joel Wirth at the Joel Wirth on the app formerly known as Twitter. We're going to be talking some risers and fallers in terms of dynasty value through the first couple of weeks of the season. Always, and this is the thing with dynasty, especially if you're new to dynasty, how you look at somebody 1 week can change completely into the next week, and it can certainly change over 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, etc. There were some people that we had ideas of how we thought they would perform in 2024 that have absolutely smashed expectations, and others that the bottom has fallen out, and now we're just like, oh shit, what do we do? So that's what this show is going to be about. We're going to be looking at some of these players to kind of get a value of, hey, these guys are for real. These guys, we need to follow what the trends are telling us. So before we get into all of that, let's pay some bills here. And the first thing I want to talk about is our partnership with Trophy Smack. Our sister site, Women of Fantasy Football and Trophy Smack have partnered up. You can use the unique link, trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Use that unique affiliate link for all of your achievement-based needs. So trophies, championship belts, rings, wall smack, treat the loser of your weekly fantasy football leagues to, greeting cards and wrestling onesies to embarrass the hell out of them. Anything that you can think of, go to trophysmack.com/WOFF and get it. The best part, from now until September 24th, so you've got until Tuesday, when you buy a when you buy a belt or trophy, use promo code WOFF, WOFF at checkout, and get yourself a shiny new championship ring. Once again, trophysmack.com/WOFF. You get a belt or a trophy. Use code WOFF, WOFF at checkout, and get yourself a free ring. trophysmack.com/WOFF. And of course, our other partnership is our good friends over at Dynasty Nerds. So go to dynastynerds.com and choose any of their memberships that they have. They have their Dynasty GM tool, which allows you to plug all of your leagues into their site. So it helps you kind of, use their player rankings and point values to, conjure up trades to increase your odds of winning your championships or rebuilds or whatever it is that you are chasing in your leagues. They have their all 22 film room, access to their Discord, all those great things over at dynastynerds.com. When you choose any of those memberships, use promo code CLUBFANTASY at checkout and save yourself 15% off of any of those membership tiers. Once again, that's dynastynerds.com. Use promo code CLUBFANTASY and save yourself 15%. All right, Joel, let's get into some dynasty values here. So first thing I want to do, this early in the season, what kind of trends are you looking for outside of just the box score scouting?
I think the main thing is usage. Okay. A couple guys we'll talk about, like specifically the running backs. How many touches are they getting? Are they getting like a full workload? So I think that's really important. And then just, it's a little bit of a vibes based thing too, right? And we'll talk about Baker Mayfield here in a second. It's like, yeah, he's taken over this offense. This is his offense. He's no longer a year-to-year guy. He's the long-term quarterback there. So, and the reverse, Bryce Young, who knows what's going to happen with him now, right? His value is completely gone to zero. So, it's, it seems like a very short period of time, just 2 weeks, but a lot has happened. A lot has kind of shown itself, and, a lot's going to keep happening. So, you got to keep on top of this stuff, and you got to, understand how values are moving.
100%. And, speaking of values, I'm going to bring up this question here from Bushman over on Twitch. Christian Watson for Leggett and Braylon Allen. Obviously, you're talking about two rookies for a guy that is in a offense that seems to have a completely different wide receiver one every single week. Would you be willing to take a chance on some of the younger unknown guys, or stick with Watson when it comes to your dynasty teams?
Like, outside of Christian Watson's mom and dad, I'm probably his biggest fan, but Braylon Allen looks really good. And he's getting, like we just talked about, he's getting much more usage. Like, he's not just a handcuff. He's like a 1B to Breece Hall. They are giving him work. So yeah, and like you mentioned, that Packer offense is just, and we talked about this going into the season. You're never going to know, who's going to be the guy on any given week. It's made it a little bit tougher with Jordan Love being out. So yeah, I think this is probably a reasonable deal, and that's probably something you'd have to consider to move off Christian Watson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure Leggett's going to help you this year. Honestly, right. I don't even know if Christian Watson's going to help you much this year, because the weeks that he goes off, you're probably not starting him. But there is definitely some value in Braylon Allen, not necessarily as, like an every week flex, but also if anything, God forbid, were to happen to Breece Hall, he instantly becomes a top 12 running back.
He's a monster
on the season. Absolutely. And he's running really well behind that revamped Jets offensive line. So I think it really just kind of depends on how my team is structured, but I don't hate this deal at all.
Yep.
Next one I'm going to bring up here from Caesar. So start in a dynasty startup, he drafted Puka, Drake London, DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell, JSN. He can start 5. Is there anybody off of this list that you would consider selling, maybe to strengthen other areas of your squad?
I think the only one that you could really sell high on is JSN. And I don't know. I think we're going to talk about him in a little bit. I don't know that he's someone I ever want to actively try to be selling. So, like everyone else, I think's value is taking a little bit of a dip. I mean, Tank Dell hasn't been real productive, although it hasn't been kind of as bad as the numbers would say. Waddle's a massive question mark, with Tua probably, I think Tua is out for the rest of the year, but that's speculative, but that's going to be an issue. DJ Moore, that whole offense is struggling. Drake London, that offense is struggling with Kirk Cousins. So, and obviously Puka's hurt. So none of those guys have really kind of at their peak value. Only JSN is after that, 16 targets the other day. So if you want to sell, high on JSN, I could see it, but I just don't like selling low on the rest of those guys. But because I think if I wait for a little bit, some of that value is going to come back. Like Tank Dell could have a monster week this week, and then he's right back to where he was.
Yeah, we were talking the other day because I've got a team that I'm looking to probably tear it down and start rebuilding, and then Puka is one of those pieces that I have. And everybody that I've been talking with about trades, the kind of value that I feel like I should be getting for Puka, regardless of whether he's hurt or not, just isn't there. And I feel like that outside of the the expert dynasty leagues where most people think along the exact same lines, most dynasty leagues are filled with people that still play dynasty very much with a redraft mindset, especially when it comes to in-season trades. So, yes, they understand the long-term aspect of dynasty, but they're not going to go through and try to trade at, Puka for peak value when they're not really getting peak production because he's hurt. So they're still going to try to lowball you and get the value where they can. To me, the only two people that you could ultimately try to move to get any sort of value that would make sense would be JSN or Drake London. The only reason I say Drake London is because he literally caught a touchdown last week. That's it. Because he had a very disappointing week 1. Yeah, and Kirk Cousins did look a lot better.
He looked better than he did week 1. So
yeah, and the move that Drake London put on Darius Slay just hurt my soul. But again, like I don't know that I would really want to move any of those guys, truthfully. I'm very much out on Waddle. I know you and I think very differently on Waddle. So, but again, because of his current situation, without Tua there, Waddle's value is absolute garbage. So people obviously would try to, be buying him low at that point, and that's not when you want to sell, is when people's values are that low. So
I mean, these are all players that I like, but I think most of them are kind of not at a place where I would want to sell them at.
I agree. And Caesar does bring up that he was offered a 2025 first for Jason, and he said no, and I'm right there with you. That means not enough. Not enough. All right, and this last one here from Blake before we get into the topics here. What are your thoughts on trade value of Kieran Williams and Devontae Adams? He has Kieran, wants to get Adams because he's weak at wide receiver.
I think that's a fair. I mean, if you're talking about swapping those two straight up, I think that's a fair deal. I think they probably have very similar value. Like Kieran Williams is going to be he's the focal point of that offense with Kupp and Puka out.
Yeah, absolutely.
They should both be back at some point, but until then, that offense is going to revolve around him. And Devontae Adams showed on Sunday he's still the same guy. He's probably going to look pretty good again this week against Carolina. So, yeah, I think that's if you're trying to sell Kyron to get a wide receiver, I think that's a perfectly fine target to go get. And probably
I don't hate it at all. I think Devontae gets a bad rap simply because he's on the quote wrong side of 30 when it comes to dynasty wide receivers, but. I mean, most running backs have the exact same shelf life anyway. So Devontae hasn't really shown that he's fallen off at all. He's still running the sidelines absolutely great. His biggest knock is he just doesn't have great quarterback play, which the way that the rumor mill is circulating, that could very well change this year in the middle of the season, let alone. So,
but I mean, Minshew showed on Sunday that he can support Adams and Bowers in the same game. So that's really all you need. So.
Yeah, as long as he's got protection, he'll be fine. I don't hate this trade at all because, I mean, look, at any moment, they could shift from Kieran Williams to Blake Corum, right? Like, they didn't invest much at all in Kieran Williams, and they're basically the same backs. And, I don't know. Give me Devontae Adams here. I'm fine with that. Sticking on the Kieran train, would you be trading James Conner for Kieran Williams?
If I'm getting Kieran Williams back, I would do that. Connor's a time bomb. He's killing it early, right? And his usage has been great, but we know he's going to miss 4 games at some point. He always does. So, I would make that trade. Assuming you're getting Kieran Williams back.
Yeah, I would prefer Connor. Honestly, the offensive line issues with the Rams are really what bother me. With Kieran Williams, I know he's going to see the volume, but his efficiency through 2 games has been really bad. And they lose like 3 offensive linemen for at least 4 weeks. Yep. So I don't really see his efficiency getting much better. And right now, James Conner's killing it. So
that's fair.
I would stick with it, truthfully. I mean, he's going to miss time, but you know what? There's nothing that says that Kieran Williams isn't going to miss time either. He missed 5 games last year, so. You could very well be staring at the exact same situation. So for me, stick with the guy that is still producing. So, all right, let's get into the quarterbacks here. So quarterbacks that have seen their values rise through the first 2 weeks of this season. We kind of alluded to him a little bit. Let's start with Baker Mayfield, who's cooking down here where I reside in Tampa. He comes through, plays on the 1-year deal last year, absolutely kills it with Dave Canales. Canales moves off, and everybody's like, oh, crap. Was Canales the reason that Baker was good? Well, Tampa invested in him. They gave him a 3-year contract, $100 million total value, I believe. So he's going to be the guy for the next 3 years. And through the first 2 weeks, he's kind of looked like the same Baker Mayfield. So maybe we were just writing him off too early. Joel, give us your thoughts on Baker and then talk to us kind of about which tier he's working his way into now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he, like I said, he has transcended that, from year to year stop. Okay, I can start this guy this year, but then I need to, he can be my quarterback 2 this year, but I'm going to need someone next year. I think he's a guy you can just plug into your QB2 and just be okay with it. He's got great receivers, right? They can't run the ball. I mean, Rachaad White, his production is all going to come through the air and checkdowns and stuff like that. So that only helps Baker. Their offensive line has kind of been pretty solid. Graham Barton looks like a stud. Their first round pick playing center. Looks like he's going to be in the pivot for 10 years. So yeah, I think everything's kind of come together. Jalen McMillan looks like he's going to be a really good player. You got Mike Evans for the next, he's re-signed. Godwin's a free agent after this year, I think, but no reason to think that he's not going to have good receivers next year. So yeah, I think he's probably put himself into that, healthy Kirk Cousins, like the Kirk Cousins of Minnesota tier, right? The guy that you can stick into your QB2. He's probably going to have some, occasional back end QB1 seasons, but he's a guy you can just stick there and be okay with.
So Keep Trade Cut currently has Baker as QB 16. Do you think that's too high or too low?
That's probably about right. I think his production will be higher than that, but I think that's probably about where his dynasty value is.
Would you have Justin Herbert over Baker?
Not for this year, but for long term, yes.
How about Dak?
Yes, I would have Dak over Baker.
Brock Purdy?
That's tougher. Purdy looked really bad on Sunday. I
He leads the NFL in passing. So
yeah, but he had some bad turnovers. I'd say they're pretty close. They're probably right next to each other.
How about T-Law?
I think you got to put Baker ahead of him, right? That offense looks non-functional.
Well, that would move Baker up at least one spot to QB 15.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's fair. I think you can probably make a case for Baker anywhere between, I'd say, like 13 and 17, just kind of depending how you look at some of the rookies, that we really haven't seen, like Penix and Drake May, and even guys like Jared Goff, who, I mean, that he's looked really bad through 2 weeks.
He's looked pretty rough too.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, mid round QB2, I dig that. And then let's talk about. Go ahead.
Like 2 years ago, was getting floated around from Carolina to the Rams and was basically an afterthought.
Yeah, I mean,
he's turned himself around.
4 teams in 3 years.
Yeah,
I mean, it just goes to show that, and I find this interesting because I caught a little bit of South Harmon's AMA last night with Mike and Adam, and one of the topics was Bryce Young and kind of how they value him in Dynasty, and what would be the point of acquiring him versus selling him off, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, you and I know Mike pretty well. He's the QB guy. He's going to hoard any and all QBs. And he brought up a really good point. Like when you look at some of these guys, like Sam Darnold, right? Early first round pick in his draft, obviously flamed out with the Jets, bombed with the Panthers, has a backup year in San Fran's, now getting a chance in Minnesota, and he's looking the part, right? He's looking like a competent quarterback. Baker kind of did the same thing, right? Traded to Carolina, didn't do so hot, moves on to LA short term, comes kind of revitalizes himself in Tampa. Anytime you have that first round pick attached to your name, teams are going to continue to give you that opportunity to show that you have something. For every Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, sure, maybe there's a Josh Rosen or a Trey Lance, right? That just completely flat out sucks. I don't know where Bryce Young fits into that. Time will tell. But Baker got the shot, and he's making the most of it. Sometimes that change of scenery, change of systems, all those things, it comes into play, and QBs just need more time, plain and simple. Like teams and general managers and owners, they just get so impatient that they bail on these young players so quickly, when right now the college game isn't really designed to develop these players the way that it used to be. because there's so much money involved now with the NIL deals. Teams are just trying to win, plain and simple. But that's also why you have these quarterbacks. I'll take Cam Ward down in Miami, for instance. They're on their fourth college team now in like 5 or 6 years. Like they're bouncing around to all these different places, right? So they're getting more opportunities. So they're coming into the league also a little bit older, as we saw with Jayden Daniels this past season. So I'm curious to see how this sort of domino effect starts to play into the NFL over the next 5-10 years, and how that's ultimately going to change dynasty managers and their thinking specifically with the quarterback position. But I want to lean into this next guy that you bring up, Kyler Murray, because there was a time where even Kyler was taking a step back in rankings, right? Like people obviously value him because of what he brings with his legs, and it's so valuable when it comes to fantasy. But the weapons weren't really there. The offensive line play was shit. Cliff Kingsbury was the coach, the play caller, and as we're seeing now in Washington, he still ain't very good. Now they bring in, obviously, a new coordinator. He comes off the ACL. Things are starting to click, and Kyler Murray looks like that top-tier guy that we once thought he was and could be. What tier do you kind of have Kyler making that jump into right now?
I put it in the show note. I think he's in the Lamar tier, where he's kind of just below the big three of Hurts, Allen, and Mahomes. I think he's kind of with Lamar, kind of right in that next group. And he's basically like, I think he's past Burrow. He's obviously past Herbert. You can make an argument whether he's past Jordan Love. But I think he's basically untouchable without making a huge sacrifice return to get him. So yeah, I think this guy's always been perpetually underrated. And now I think now that he has the weapons, right, that he's got an elite receiver in Marvin Harrison, he's got an elite tight end in Trey McBride. The offensive line has been upgraded. He's got a really good running game with James Conner, like we talked about. Now the infrastructure around him is kind of improved, and now I think people are kind of looking at him with kind of fresh eyes. Like he's always been, whenever he's been healthy, he's usually like QB, like anywhere between QB5 and QB8.
Yeah.
So, and I think now that people are kind of looking at him and seeing what's around him, now they kind of see the upside. They see that, okay, this is a guy who's going to be a top 8 quarterback, basically no matter what, as long as he stays healthy. So yeah, I think he's moved probably at least I would take him over Anthony Richardson right now.
I would 100% do the same.
Without hesitation.
I'm also not the biggest A-Rich fan. Like, I understand the value of his legs, but you still have to be able to do it with your arm. And right now, I just don't see that with Anthony Richardson.
We'll talk about him in a little bit, but I would easily take Kyler over him. And you mentioned this is a guy who could be like the dynasty asset number 1 in Superflex. That outcome was within his range of possibilities. It's going to be a while till we get there. So,
yeah, you mentioned kind of putting him in that Lamar tier, having him over Jordan Love, having him over Burrow. What about CJ Stroud? Because he seems to be like that hottest commodity right now. Keep Trade Cut has him as QB3. His values obviously spiked big time in the offseason. Maybe it's come back down to earth a little bit, but most people, at least according to Keep Trade Cut, have him above Lamar and Jalen Hurts, which I think is crazy, but whatever. Would you take Kyler over CJ?
I would. Because I think, like I talked about all off season, like Stroud and Burrow and Love are all the same guy. So you put those guys all together. I think I'd rather have Kyler.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
I will say I have one league. I had one league where I had Kyler this offseason, and I ended up tearing down to Brock Purdy in a first, and I'm kicking myself because my QB2 is Trevor Lawrence, and he really does not look the part right now. And I'm like, because QBs are obviously the hardest thing to acquire without overpaying in Dynasty. So, that's going to be a swift kick in the crotch. All right. I want to bring this up from Caesar real quick before we get into the running back position. Thoughts on Ben Sinnott in Dynasty? Someone dropped him after 1 week, and I picked him up. There's no taxi squad, but there is definitely a deep bench.
I've always thought he was Kyle Juszczyk. I mean, he's an H-back, so if you want to sit him, and he's got 0 touches so far, so he's not part of the offense. I don't think you're going to get any value out of him this year. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but there's probably worse guys to stack or sit on your bench in Dynasty, but I just don't see the upside there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he should be rostered in Dynasty. I mean, unless you're
he should be rostered for sure.
An 8-man Dynasty league or something along those lines. But even not in a tight end premium, like I'm somebody that I hoard tight ends, like the same way that Mike with South Harmon, like the way he hoards quarterbacks, I hoard tight ends because they're so few and far between when it comes to the elite options. It's basically my way of streaming the position. I'm going to have a ton of tight ends, especially if my roster is deep enough. Like I have one Dynasty league where I think there's like 40 something people on the roster. And I think I have like almost 10 tight ends. Like it's literally a quarter of my roster. So I'm going to make sure that I somehow stream the position. And if I absolutely have to, I'll start 2 of them. But yes, Sanad is somebody that I'm going to roster. But I'm with you. I think he's more of an H-back. I don't see this year being much of anything. Zach Ertz has come out. He started to, play well. He's gelling with Jaden Daniels and kind of becoming that safety blanket. Has experience in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. It's going to take some time. When people panic drop somebody, that's your opportunity to shine. Go grab those pieces, right? That's what you did here. And,
Sanad probably got taken in the late second in the draft.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's worth stashing. Yeah, you got a free draft pick. So
free draft pick. And we love free. So, all right, cool. Let's move into the running back risers here. I'm going to name off the 3 guys here because we've obviously got a lot to talk about. And we've only got an hour. So you mentioned 3 guys that I really like. Devon Achane, James Cook, Rhamondre Stevenson. So I think with Rhamondre, it all boils down to the volume. Obviously, we don't love the offense. Their offensive line is absolute dog shit, but they have a quarterback that isn't taking a ton of downfield shots. He's likely going to carry the ball 280 times and catch another 40 to 60 balls. Rachaad White from 2023. That's kind of the way that I would put it right now. I don't know if he's going to have the touchdowns, but if he stays healthy, that's a top 12 running back in fantasy. James Cook feels pretty self-explanatory. The way he's just dominating the usage, especially for his size, I feel like people were really kind of dialing back on, but I want to hear about Achane. And I know you are kind of been like the quintessential Devon Achane truther. I have him in our club Dynasty League, which is great because I have him next to Breece Hall, and I feel like that to me is a lot more comfortable because I can kind of pair him with a steady hand and just treat him as the high upside guy that he is. So seeing his usage from last week, especially when once Tua got out, they got down against Buffalo, and they said, you know what? You're still our guy. You're going to go out there. No Mostert. We don't care about getting Jalen Wright these touches when we're down by 35 or whatever it was. They keep trotting out Achane. Let's talk Achane here and figure out how does he now fit once Mostert comes back healthy, if Mostert ages himself out and Jalen Wright comes in. Can his 188-pound frame continue to be a high-volume, high-efficiency back?
Yeah, obviously the caveat here is we're 2/17 of the way through the season, so there's a lot to be. But yeah, I mean he's the bell cow there, and then the offense runs through him is probably going to run through him without Tua. So I mean he was the man with even in week 1 when Mostert was healthy. Obviously the touch efficiency has come down a little bit. It's not over 7, but it's still high 5s. It's almost 6. He's getting work in the passing game. He's getting, 7-8 targets a game. He's getting, 15 carries a game. So you put that touch volume into that, that player who is so incredibly efficient. You combine the efficiency with the volume and you've got a superstar. Like this is a legit league winner if he can play 17 games.
I'm with you. Kind of wishing I had more Devon Achane, truthfully. I I do have him in a couple of redraft leagues, which, is great, especially because his value started to depress a little. I did one league where somebody actually drafted Raheem Mostert over Devon Achane, which I laughed at. So, hey, some people just have to learn things the hard way, I guess. But, real quick on James Cook, like, I know a lot of people were buying, quote unquote, buying the hype with Ray Davis that he was going to come in and kind of be the hammer to James Cook is, the lightning aspect of it. But they're going through and they're feeding Cook, and he actually scored rushing touchdowns, 3 touchdowns in week 2. Like, what are we talking about? Literally, like, what? He scored half the amount of touchdowns in 2 weeks, really in 1 week, that he scored in all of 2023. I think that alone should shoot him up the value draft boards, in my opinion. But what do I know?
I mean, to show how much he has moved up, just before the show tonight, about a couple hours ago, I was offered Cook for George Pickens, and I took it without hesitating. And that's a deal I would have laughed at, 2 weeks ago before the season started.
Wait, so got Cook for George Pickens?
Yes.
Okay, I was about to say, because I want nothing to do with George Pickens.
Like, I don't like buying running backs. I don't like buying running backs this early in the season. But, like, if you're going to give James Cook 20 touches a game in this offense, again, just like Achane, he's a league winner. And we've seen that he can, like, maybe now that the struggles inside the 5 last year were a fluke, because he's doing it. He's got 3 touchdowns. So one was passing, but, he's got 2 short touchdowns. So, yeah, you put that kind of volume in that offense with Joe Brady, who's shown that he wants to run the ball, and he's going to be a very heavy run over or very low pass rate over expectation guy. That's a pretty serious run. That's a top 6 running back if he can sustain the entire season. He's a small guy like Achane, but if he can get through the season, that's a top 6 back.
I'm with you 100%. And I've got a lot of James Cook in Dynasty, so feeling good about this one. Feeling good. All right, let's get into this next section here with the running backs the wide receivers whose value is starting to come up. And this question here from Captain Asano, I think, is a perfect segue into this, simply because one of these guys that we're going to be talking about is featured here. So they were offered Devonta Smith and Nico Collins for Justin Jefferson. Now, I know Nico is one of your top guys that has really started to move up the chain in dynasty rankings. Is this a deal that you would consider for Justin Jefferson, or would you still need more on top of that, considering we know what Devonta Smith is? Without A.J. Brown, he is a top 10 wide receiver. With A.J. Brown, to me, he's still a top 15 wide receiver.
I'm doing this in a heartbeat. And I talked about this on the show Tuesday night on the trade show. I think Nico Collins needs to be in that kind of 1B tier with kind of Amon-Ra St. Brown, to kind of right after the Chase Lamb Jefferson tier. So if you're giving me a Devonta Smith, again, a wide receiver, a demonstrated wide receiver 2, on top of Nico Collins, just to take that slight tier down. And I think it's a very small tear down, because I think Nico Collins is that damn good. I'm doing that all day.
Yeah, I think that when they say overpay, I'm fine saying, throw in a second. Yeah. Because I feel like that's enough to where it doesn't scare the other manager off, but it gives you that extra lottery ticket for whether it's, acquiring a running back, towards the tail end of the season, or, attaching that pick to another player for an upgrade, et cetera, right? Like, I'm always somebody that I try to get that extra draft pick on. I'm with you. I think this is fair. I mean, the deal that we made last year for CeeDee Lamb, and I basically gave you Waddle and Nico plus a shit ton of draft picks. But I got mine out of it. I won my championship, and that's what exactly. It mattered. So, but really wishing I still had Nico Collins right about now, considering what DJ Moore looks like. But yeah, I'm fine with this trade, because, like I said, I love Devonta Smith, and I think the way that this offense is structured, even once A.J. Brown gets back, Devonta Smith is still going to be a very heavily featured piece of that offense, whereas the last couple of years, it was more spike weeks. where I don't think that that's going to be the case here with Kellen Moore. Once AJ
he's
Brown
getting slot snaps too, which is
exactly
really
they moved him into the slot, and that's where he is so incredibly dangerous.
Yep.
So incredibly dangerous there. Just to name off some of the other guys that you see where the value rise has come from. Obviously, we just touched on Nico here. Jayden Reed from the Packers, Rashee Rice, Rashid Shaheed. I think that's a big one that a lot of people probably didn't see coming. They obviously see the boom potential with him. JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba up in Seattle. We had a lot of talk about him in the offseason, especially on the Trade Block show. And then Jameson Williams. Now, a couple of these I do want to touch on here. Let's start with Jayden Reed, because I know you're a Packers fan. And we talked about it a little bit with the earlier trade question involving Christian Watson. This offense really does kind of feel like, it's going to be a flavor of the week type thing. I thought Jayden Reed would have a bigger week 2, simply because he would be the guy that, kind of used out of the backfield and on these jet sweeps and things like that. It was okay. It wasn't anything great. Obviously, we know that he had a huge spike in week 1. With the reports that Jordan Love is practicing even on a limited basis, I still think he misses week 3, probably comes back in week 4. Where are you on Reed and then obviously the rest of these Packers wide receivers?
He cost me a lot of money in DFS last week because I was like you. I was hammering him really hard because I thought, with Malik Willis, they were going to want to get a lot of, easy button touches and, manufactured stuff. And Jayden Reed would be the guy. He was just full blown decoy. That's all he really was. And that's okay, from a Packer fan, because it worked. Like, they ran the ball 53 times. They ran the ball right down the Colts' throat. So you can't really complain they won the game. So I'm basing this more on week 1 than anything, but yeah, he's probably only going to be like a 65% snap share guy, but man, it's just, he is the guy, like when the play breaks down, he's the guy that Jordan Love is looking for. So
I agree.
I just think when he's really damn good. So, and as much as I think they need Christian Watson because he's the kind of guy that opens up everything else, and he's going to be on the field for, like, he's going to have a higher snap share. Yeah, I just think Jayden Reed is the much more important. I shouldn't say important, but he, like I said, he's the guy that Love is looking for. He's the guy that they're getting manufactured touches for. So yeah, I think he can sustain his production even with a low snap share.
Yeah, this is kind of what I said, and I've said this previously. Like, I think Jayden Reed and Tank Dell are very similar pieces in the sense that they're the guys that are likely coming off the field when they're running 2 wide receiver sets.
Yep.
But when they're in 3 wide receiver sets, they're going to have manufactured touches where they're the first or second read in their offense. They're both used on jet sweeps, end arounds, running back touches, those types of things, because they are such dynamic playmakers, right? And that's what offenses are really going towards, especially these offenses that derive from the Shanahan tree. Both Green Bay and Houston are very similar in that aspect. Jayden Reed has a little bit more size to him than Tank Dell. That's why I like Jayden Reed a lot more. I won Dynasty League where I tiered down from DJ Moore, got Jayden Reed in the first, and I feel a lot better about that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a trade. That's a tier down that I like, right?
Yep.
Fucked up on the Kyler one, but, to each their own. You can't win them all, I guess. But, yeah, I'm with you. Jayden Reed's kind of that Packers wide receiver that I definitely prefer. I think he's just the Swiss Army knife, right? Like, I think it feels like Romeo Doubs is going to be the more consistent wide receiver, I think, from a week-to-week basis, even if it's not always flashy. And then you're going to have, like, the Dontavian Wicks and the Christian Watsons that are more of, like, the Rashid Shaheeds of the offense, right? They're going to be the big play guys that, get down the field, that ultimately keep the defense honest. And then when Jordan Love wants to take that shot, that's their play. Which I was really surprised to see Wicks was the one that actually caught the touchdown last week, considering I didn't think Malik Willis could even throw the damn football. So there's that. I don't want to touch too much on Rashee Rice. To me, he never should have lost value. He's a good player, and he's tied to Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the NFL. So anyway, Rashid Shaheed, I'm with you. I think he's still very much a one-trick pony, but this offense, if it keeps going the way that it's going, there's a lot of value there. JSN, look, we've already beat this dead horse. Check out the Trade Blocked episode where we featured JSN. I believe it was the very first episode. You can get a lot more opinions on JSN there. Shout out to our buddy Hoove. He was beating this drum all off season. That's his guy. I want to bring up Jameson Williams because you were extremely high on Williams during the draft process 3 years ago. And after that first year, when we all knew that he was going to struggle because he was coming off the injury, you were instantly just out. And then the gambling suspension and all that stuff.
I was out after the gambling suspension. That's when I was out.
Fair enough. But now the tides are turning. Joel's buying back in here. I want to talk what his value is because I have seen a lot of people when I'm trying to offer trades because I'm trying to get a gauge on what the public value is of Jameson Williams right now. And a lot of people are like, oh, no, I'm all the way bought back in. Like, this is a legit star in the making. But, like, they're treating him like Rhamondre St. Brown. I think that's freaking crazy. So let's kind of flush out his value a little bit, Joel. Where do you see him now with this, like, I mean, again, he's got 20 targets over the first 2 weeks of the season. We've barely seen Rhamondre St. Brown was a ghost in week 1, and Sam LaPorta has been nothing through 2 weeks this season when he was the tight end 1 last year.
Yeah, and the show, and we talked about him last week, but I said this is the most circuitous third-year breakout ever for a wide receiver, just because. And
well, Nico was a third-year wide receiver last year.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, he just didn't have like the quarterback play, and we knew he was probably pretty good, but we didn't know for sure. Like Jameson Williams, it's like year 1, he couldn't get on the field because of the knee injury, and then when he did, he just like was persona non grata. They just, they weren't throwing to him at all, couldn't earn targets. Then he gets the suspension, and that's when I was like, okay, this guy, I just don't trust this guy. I don't trust the decision making. Looked like, when he eventually got on the field, it's like, okay, that he's probably just Rashid Shaheed light, where he's just going to be a deep shot guy, and that's it. And there's going to be no volume. He's got 20 targets this year. That for the type of player he is. I mean, they're treating him like he was at Alabama. So, that's why I liked him so much. He was a great player at Alabama. So, yeah, like we talked about last week, I got to take the double L. I got out too soon, and now I got to get back in. But, I think he's a guy who, before the season, there's no way you could sell him for a first. Now it's probably a first plus.
So where would you fit him within your rankings? Which tiers are you on? Because I'm looking at Keep Trade Cut right now, and they basically have him sandwiched between George Pickens and Jayden Reed, and that's above DJ Moore, above Tank Dell, above Debo and Chris Godwin, but below Roma Dunze, Zay Flowers, JSN, Metcalf, and Waddle.
I would clearly take him over Pickens. Like rest of season, I would take him over Jalen Waddle just because I don't know what that Miami offense is going to look like. And I don't know that Skylar Thompson and or Tyler Huntley can support, 3 options in Achane and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So, yeah, I would pretty clearly take him over Waddle, at least for rest of season. So, and like rest of season carries a lot of weight, right? Like the way I look at it is, 60% of a player's value is what he can provide for me this year, 30% next year, 10% the year after that. So rest of season is probably worth 50% of a player's value. So yeah, I think it's probably reasonable to have him ranked over Jalen Waddle. And this is coming from a guy who loves Jalen Waddle, the player, but I guess they both came out of Alabama.
You've seen that much in 2 weeks where you're buying into it, huh?
If you had told me at any point in the season there was going to be a 2-game stretch where Jameson Williams got 20 targets, I probably would have said you're crazy. And then I said, okay, I want him. I'm buying right now. So yeah, I just never thought that kind of volume was possible. So, but now we've seen it, and let's say once a player shows they can do something, they own that skill. So he can earn targets in this offense. So who would you rather have call in plays for you than Ben Johnson, to be honest?
Right now, yeah, that offense is cooking. What I will say, he's only caught 50% of those targets. So,
yeah, but like they're high value touches, so that's probably okay for him.
Yeah, I think on the cusp of that top 24, I think is pretty appropriate for Jameson Williams right now. I'm okay with that valuation, truthfully. So I'll bring this up because this is probably fits right along the same lines, like with two guys that I think can be sort of in that same conversation to Jameson Williams. A little nervous about Tyreek. Would you trade Zay Flowers or trade Tyreek to get Zay Flowers and London? It's kind of similar to that Justin Jefferson question, right? Like, you're getting two guys that, maybe we kind of know what they are. There's obviously some potential to continue to grow. Is that enough for Tyreek, who obviously in Dynasty is more of an aging asset than Justin Jefferson?
Like, I would probably do this deal if Tua was healthy, just considering Tyreek's age. I mean, Zay Flowers just he's picked up right where he left off, right? He's still garnering a ton of targets. Mm-hmm. London is supremely talented. It's just, whenever Cousins gets healthy. So I think this is more than fair for Tyreek. Like, Tyreek's age is becoming an issue in the Dynasty community. So, and he's a guy that he's so much of his value is predicated on speed that any kind of soft tissue injury is going to take him out and it's going to be a problem. So, yeah, I think the Zay and London side is just much safer than the Tyreek side. Like, it doesn't have the crazy upside that Tyreek does, but does he have that upside with Skylar Thompson right now? Probably not.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a decent trade. I mean, like I said, I'm very much can you get a little something on the back end, maybe a second, something along those lines, because again, you're giving up the best player in that deal. So I want to try to get as many pieces that can help me as I continue to build my rosters. So I'm definitely fine with that. I'll bring this one up from Crooners here. The fuck is going on with Garrett Wilson? So I want to preface this. I'm guessing he's referencing the current Thursday night game that is going on. For those that happen to be listening on the podcast feed, you will have a better idea of what Garrett Wilson's final numbers are. But currently at the half, Garrett Wilson has 4 targets, 2 catches, and 15 yards, while Allen Lazard has 3 for 48 and a touchdown. Mike Williams 2 for 16, and Aaron Rodgers seems to be throwing to everybody but Garrett Wilson. So, I will lend this to you, Joel. Is this a matter of they're just going with the matchups? Is Aaron Rodgers just kind of favoring the guy that he has a really good relationship with that defenses just aren't paying attention to because he's obviously not near as athletic or talented? Where do you sit on that?
I guess I haven't really paid close attention to the game tonight, so I can't really tell what they're trying to do. Are they trying to take him away? I'm not really sure. So I guess I can't. He's been fine, right? He's getting a ton of targets. That's life in the NFL for a wide receiver, right? There's always the possibility that you're going to get game scripted out of any particular game, especially against a good defense like the Patriots. So I'm not going to stress over one game. Obviously, you and I talked about, we both had him in our captain spot for our contest for the Thursday night showdown. So a little disappointing, but yeah, shit happens.
Fair enough. All right, I'm going to bring up this last one from Bronson. He does preface this as a redraft question. We don't discriminate, but I'll answer it anyway. So he was offered Amon-Ra and Swift for Derek Carr, Jordan Mason, and Jalen Waddle. Or he could get Devontae Adams and Rashad White for Carr, Mason, and Waddle. Which side would you take? Now, this is a 10-team, 2-quarterback with 3 flexes, and his QBs are Mahomes, Geno, and Tua. Kind of a loaded question.
DeAndre Swift is a dead zero for me. So
I agree.
As much as I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's tough to take that side. It's a 2-quarterback.
Yep.
Not a super flex.
Correct.
Carr, Mason, and Waddle. I can't do that Swift side. I don't want Swift at all. He's been absolutely terrible. He's got the worst rushing yards under expected or whatever, the worst rushing yards over expected. He's been, despite having the highest or the least percentage of stacked boxes. I mean, he's been god awful. He's been really bad. Devontae and Rachaad White, I don't love. I was
going to say Rachaad White's been pretty bad too, and he's hurt.
Yeah. His rushing efficiency is just as bad, probably worse than last year. So yeah, you're 100% counting on passing volume with him. And like with Chris Godwin going off, I don't know that he's going to have as much volume. So like, I think in a 2 quarterback, I'm just inclined to hold, and I think I can do better for Derek Carr because Carr's killing it right now.
I was going to say Carr's killing it. 2 quarterback enhances his value even more.
Exactly.
I mean, I get wanting to deal Mason because he's a short-term starter. Obviously, the issues with Waddle and the Tua situation, everything of that nature. So, getting a guy like Rhamondre or Devontae is a clear upgrade there. But to me, you're giving up too much because Carr's value shoots through the roof because it's a 2 quarterback league.
Yep.
So
agreed.
I would go back to the drawing board, truthfully. I like the idea of what you're trying to do, package the short-term guys like Mason and, the decline of Waddle with the spike of Derek Carr. But you're really losing out with those running backs with getting back White or Swift, truthfully, Bronson. I think.
Yeah, I like the idea of getting Devontae and or Amon-Ra and upgrading from Waddle to them, but yeah, the second pieces you're getting are just not up to snuff to make this deal.
Yeah, and also keep in mind too, yes, Tua is on IR and can, in theory, come back after 4 weeks. He may not come back after 4 weeks, and if that's the case, trading Carr, now you only have 2 quarterbacks. So there's a case to be made that maybe keeping Carr is the right move here, because Tua's situation is so very much unknown that maybe if you trade Carr, if you trade Carr, you actually want to get a quarterback, even if it's a mediocre quarterback. You want a quarterback in return. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, even if I could get like a Matthew Stafford, somebody that really hasn't popped yet, but we know the potential, and people probably aren't valuing him very much because of the loss of Carr and Kupp or Cooper Kupp and Puka. That's still a piece that if you need, like, for a bye week start when Mahomes and Gino are on bye, like, that's fine, right? Those would be the type,
especially 2 quarterback. I mean, that you don't have that super flex option. That makes a big difference. You really need to have a 3rd quarterback.
100%. All right. So I'm seeing a lot of redraft questions that are popping into the chat. I first want to preface, this is a Dynasty show, folks. I will happily try to get to them as we go through, but I want to get through the main points of everything else that we're doing. If you haven't liked, subscribed the video, we greatly appreciate it. We do have a start sit show that we do every single Saturday at 11 a.m. We will happily answer any and all of your redraft questions, start sits, trade questions, any and all natures. That's what we're here for. I'm going to try to go through and answer some of these in the chat while Joel sort of breaks down some of his talk of these positions and so on and so forth. So let's kind of talk about the tight end position here, because the guy that you mentioned here, one of my favorite picks from this rookie draft. Let's talk about Brock Bowers and why people should be thinking of him as the Dynasty tight end 1.
I think he is where we wanted Kyle Pitts to be. Remember a couple of years ago, like, Kyle Pitts was the most valuable, like, non-quarterback asset in Dynasty, just because of the prospect profile. We thought he was going to be unstoppable. Hasn't happened for a variety of reasons, but like, Bowers had that kind of same prospect profile, and like he's transcended the supposed quarterback concerns that we had with Gardner Minshew. And some of this has to do with Sam LaPorta falling back, which is, has a lot to do with Jameson Williams. But yeah, I got offered Amon-Ra St. Brown straight up for Brock Bowers in a full point time at premium, and I turned it down.
Ooh, I was going to say, I just got offered 2 firsts straight up for Bowers.
Nope, not doing it.
I was gonna say, I'm like, first off, I'm 3-1. Why would I be trading one of the guys that are helping me be 3-1 right now?
Yeah.
Just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, I judging on the trades I'm getting, the offers I'm getting, and the trades I've seen go down, I think he's the Dynasty tight end 1.
Okay. Yeah, Sam LaPorta was short-lived, huh?
That window closed quickly.
It's a new world, people, and Brock Bowers is the king. All right, let's shift gears here. Let's get into the dynasty players whose value is falling from the skies. Oh, no. All right, let's start with the quarterback position. A few names that you've got here. I feel like the obvious one, obviously, Bryce Young, already being benched in his second year. Not very good news. But much like we've seen over the years with guys like Baker and Sam Darnold, if he gets an opportunity somewhere else, there's still hope. But as of right now, he's a dead asset. You're either stuck holding him or trading him for, a third or fourth round pick, truthfully, at this point. Just getting something that
I got offered Christian Kirk for him the other day. I'm like, why?
Yeah, right.
He's doing nothing, so I'd rather just hold and see if. And you brought it up earlier. The system is going to be the thing with him. He's got to get with a good play caller who's going to know how to use him and have a plan how to use him. So,
Sam Darnold, and that's the thing is, I don't think that Dave Canales is a bad quarter, a bad coach or bad system by any means. It's just the way that everything is set. Like the hand that Dave Canales was dealt was not great at all. No. Like they spent the money to try to go and fix the offensive line. That's going to take time, right? They spent a lot of money on those players, which is great, but offensive lines just don't gel overnight. It's just not how it goes. So,
this should have happened last year.
Well, agreed. It should have. Tua Tagovailoa, I mean, this is his fifth concussion now in 5 years, third in 3 years. Maybe he retires, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. Obviously, you really can't do much with him in Dynasty. I have him in our Club Dynasty League. Thankfully, I have Hurts and Jared Goff too, but now I'm searching for a QB3 and I'm like, oh shit, I don't feel great about this. So I got to go shopping here after this episode. Will Levis, I know there was definitely some hype with the new system coming in from Brian Callahan and how much they were going to throw the football, and he's looked good in spurts and then looked like the bad Will Levis from last year, right? I mean, quick thoughts here on Levis before we get to the main topic here.
Yeah, I just said the optimism window slammed shut really quick. I mean, there was, like you said, there was a lot of optimism with the new system with Brian Callahan coming in. They brought in Calvin Ridley, and this is going to be a much more pass-friendly offense than it was under Vrabel. I just don't think he's ever going to be any more than he is now. It's just the mistakes have not stopped. I think he's basically a combine warrior quarterback, and that sucks because he's got all the tools, but just don't think he's got don't think he is the head for it.
Fair enough. And speaking of combine warriors, let's talk about Anthony Richardson, because the man put on a show at the combine. We know, and I mean, shit, the big pass week 1 down the field to Alec Pierce, who on 8 targets or whatever is the wide receiver 8 through 2 weeks in fantasy. Love that, right? Everybody said that A-Rich has all the tools to be the overall QB1, not only in fantasy, but clearly in Dynasty. And there were some people that were drafting him like that because he came out the same year as Bijan Robinson. Through 2 games, we've seen the spikes. I mean, he touched the ball 15 times and had 300 total yards and 3 touchdowns in week 1. And then in week 2, looked like the Anthony Richardson that probably should have stayed another year in college. So let's talk Anthony Richardson. Where is this value gone? Is it still viable? Can he ultimately get better by staying in Indianapolis and continuing to work through these inconsistencies?
So the bright side is he stayed healthy for 2 games. That's progress.
Small victories, baby.
And the caveat is that, he's only had 6 NFL starts, so he's basically still a rookie. But Yeah, that upside just seems so far away. I mean, it's probably going to be a couple of years. I mean, and I compared him to Josh Allen. I mean, look how long it took Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen's first year was a disaster. His second year was, okay, I can kind of see it. And then his third year was where he took off. So, I mean, if you figure that, Anthony, they're very similar players. So if you figure that Anthony Richardson basically lost like 3/4 of his first year, if it's going to take another 2 years for him to develop, I can't be holding that. Right? He's going to have some spike games, sure, but he's going to have like the Packers just put onto tape how to beat them, right?
Yep.
Just cover deep, rush in your lanes. You don't have to pressure him that much because he can't throw anything intermediate. So as long as you take away the deep ball and just let him make the mistakes. They got 3 picks on him, just doing that and just not pressuring him at all. So yeah, that blueprint is out there now. So now he's not only got to fix his issues, now he's got to kind of overcome that. He's got to adjust to that. So yeah, it just seems a long ways away for him to become the talent is still there. The upside of being the most valuable superflex asset is still there. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a long time, to be honest. And he may not come through on the other side. There's no given that Josh Allen becomes Josh Allen.
You mean A-Rich becomes Josh Allen?
Well, I mean, yeah, the rookie Josh Allen turned into elite Josh Allen. There's no guarantee that happens. So yeah, there's no guarantee that we see, peak Anthony Richardson.
That's fair. So I actually, and it's funny you talk about Anthony Richardson because I was literally just offered a trade for Anthony Richardson not an hour before we went live. So it's a 1-quarterback league, and I was offered a second and Ladd McConkey for Anthony Richardson because my starting quarterback right now is Justin Herbert and my backup is Sam Darnold. Would you have done that trade?
I don't love McConkey. So I wouldn't have done that. I would have. You make that Brian Thomas Jr.? Yeah, I'm doing it.
That's fair. Well, I mean, I don't have Brian Thomas Jr., but.
Oh, okay, well. You make it a Dunze and I'm doing it.
Yeah, because I mean, and that's sort of what I'm thinking. Because, like, I mean, again, like I'm fine sticking with Herbert in Dynasty. Like the way that my team is structured, like it has Justin Jefferson, has Jamar Chase, has Jayden Reed. I have Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, and Rhamondre Stevenson, and then Brock Bowers at tight end. So, like, I don't need that elite level production at quarterback. Right. But we talked about Anthony Richardson on Wednesday's No Pun Intended, or maybe it was one of the other shows earlier in the week. Anthony Richardson could be QB4 or QB40 in any week. Yep. So, I almost kind of feel like I'd rather just have the safe production that I know what Justin Herbert gets me versus trying to guess when Anthony Richardson is going to connect on 2 50-yard bombs.
Yeah, with that team, you want the stability. You want the floor play, not the ceiling play. You don't need the ceiling play. So that makes sense.
So I don't know that acquiring A-Rich really makes a ton of sense for me anyway. But again, I'm also not naive to what Anthony Richardson can be, what that ceiling.
Oh, you were being offered Richardson?
I was being offered Richardson. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm not paying for Richardson on that team. No,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I mean, even if it was just a 2nd round pick, and again, this is still it's a 1-quarterback league. We're not talking super flex. So maybe I would do it for just a second, but.
Like there's value in having an elite quarterback in 1 quarterback, definitely. But like you said, with your team, you don't want the volatility. You want stability.
Correct. All right. Let's go to the wide receiver position here. Got a few options. A couple that really stand out to me, but one really in particular. We touched on Anthony Richardson. Obviously, his number 1 target, Michael Pittman, seemingly goes as he goes, right? Like he doesn't have that short to intermediate accuracy. That's the area of the field where Michael Pittman sees the most action. So unless they're getting Michael Pittman some downfield targets, this is going to be a struggle for Michael Pittman and his dynasty value. Christian Kirk, man, what the fuck is going on in Jacksonville, dude? Because I was so high on Christian Kirk heading into this season. I do have him in a couple dynasty leagues, and I'm like, all right, this is like, I'm feeling good here. through 2 weeks, man. What does he have? 1 catch?
He had a catch for negative yardage the other day.
It's so bad right now. So bad. But the one I really want to talk
scoring,
about,
he had negative points.
Yeah, it's bad. The one I really want to talk about is Terry McLaurin, because I feel like everybody in Dynasty keeps telling me this is a great player. He's got wide receiver 1 upside. You know, he's been saddled by poor quarterback play, and all he needed was somebody that can get him the football. They draft Jayden Daniels, and everybody says, all right, I'm in on Terry McLaurin. Things are looking great. Through 2 weeks, it's the same old shit. What are we doing with Terry McLaurin? Can he come out of this Cliff Kingsbury shadow?
We talked in the preseason that he was a huge sell because he's older than people think, right? He's 28. So, and now he's saddled in an offense that's not going to utilize him. And I think you bring up a good point. Is he really that good? Because he's never been elite. He's always been good, and we've always thought that there's more there. But at some point, you are what you are. And it's, you know, you've got to transcend the situation. And he has never done that. So, yeah, I think he's just kind of a mid guy in a really bad situation. And he's an aging asset. So, yeah, I'm glad I was getting out in the preseason.
Yeah, it's so bad right now. I mean, Daniels is getting hurried, which, again, young quarterbacks who especially can run, when they get hurried, their first instinct is to take off. And, you know, he's gotten a lot of yards on scrambles so far this year. And, you know, Scampers brings it up. Jayden Daniels and Cliff are really the problem. And you know what? Maybe I
don't think Jayden Daniels is the problem.
But if he's also not targeting him, then he's part of the problem, right? Because the targets really haven't been there either. I mean, even in week 1, all the targets were going to running backs and tight ends.
Yeah.
And you had a great matchup in week 2. McLaurin did, and only came down with 2 receptions. So, like, we've seen wide receiver 1s in Cliff Kingsbury's offense do really well. DeAndre Hopkins gets traded there, balls out in Arizona. Kyler Murray finds him, right? So what's the issue here then with Terry McLaurin? Like, I don't think the Commanders' offensive line is great, but I also don't think it's bottom 5 in the league.
It might be. It's pretty bad.
I mean,
that Cosby guy they got playing left tackle is really bad. He was.
Yeah, I mean,
I
agree.
Pretty good,
but I'm just saying, to me, there are worse offensive lines out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but again, like, if you know that that's the problem, why aren't you trying to do more of these, like, pick and pop screen type plays that get Terry McLaurin the ball and let him do his thing from a yak perspective? He has 4.33 speed, and they're not even scheming for him.
I think when you bring up DeAndre Hopkins, I think that's exhibit A, that Terry McLaurin is just not, he's not an alpha. So he's not DeAndre Hopkins. So I think to expect him to carry a load like that is just expecting him to do something that he doesn't have the skills to do, doesn't have the tools to do. I think he should probably be more of a secondary receiver, a second banana to a Justin Jefferson type. That I think that's where he's never had that opportunity to get attention schemed away from him. So yeah, I don't think he's the alpha that people think he is.
Okay. So I'll bring this up for Scampers. So when pressure, Jayden Daniels is passing like 26% of dropbacks. Yeah, he's bad. It's either scrambles or sacks, right? Not great.
Not necessarily bad for fantasy, but bad for real life.
Also true. So I want to put a scenario out there for you, because you kind of laid out like Terry McLaurin probably operates better as a 2. And again, I don't disagree with that. Let's say that Washington finds himself with a top 5 draft pick heading into the 2025 draft. And there is a elite wide receiver option and an elite offensive line option staring you in the face. Now, we saw this scenario with the Giants, who also have a dog shit offensive line, and they said, we want to get our quarterback a weapon, and they drafted Malik Neighbors over going with like J.C. Latham or any of the other tackles, right? If you're Washington, what are you doing? Are you taking the elite offensive lineman or are you taking the elite wide receiver? Because there are going to be some elite wide receivers that come out of this draft class that are going to be in the top 5.
Doesn't Washington have to be a heavy favorite to take Travis Hunter?
I mean, they need a corner too, so
they need exactly. They need a quarterback really bad. They need a guy who can play. Even if Travis Hunter plays 30% of snaps, that would be a massive upgrade. So I think they're just a massive favorite to take him. But yeah, you see the dilemma. They've got a lot of places they need to address.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, in your mind, defense, like, what is more important?
Yeah, I think they probably need to address offensive line first.
So that keeps Terry McLaurin in that wide receiver 1 role that he's probably not excelling at.
Is he on the team next year?
He's the leader of that team. So
I don't know his contract status, but it just doesn't feel like he's a fit.
All right, fair enough. All right. Let's go to the last section here. Let's talk tight ends. And I think the clear and obvious answer, Sam LaPorta is getting boxed out by Jameson Williams. Everybody was all on board. Sam LaPorta being the dynasty tight end 1. And here comes Jameson Williams, says, fantasy managers, you want to buy me and not LaPorta.
Obviously, Jameson Williams is a problem for Sam LaPorta. Here's the bigger problem. It's his usage. It's like he's lining up in the backfield. They're playing him at tight end or at fullback. They're using him like a use check type. And that's not fantasy conducive at all. So yeah, I'm very concerned that he might just get kind of boxed out of the offense.
See, I have an orphan that I took over, and everybody's trying to acquire Sam LaPorta, and I'm trying so desperately hard to squeeze out maximum value, and everybody keeps like low ball offering me, and all I need is, and I don't think it's a good matchup for him this week against Arizona, but I'm just waiting for that one big breakout because I'm trying to get like a Jameson Williams and a first round pick because it's a tight end premium, and it's a full point tight end premium league. So Sam LaPorta has like insane value in that, but he's not going to have it if he keeps putting up goose eggs over these next few weeks.
If he keeps getting 4 targets a game, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. So I've got another league where I have both LaPorta and Mark Andrews, and I feel like there's a scenario where neither of them are, top 5 dynasty tight ends by season's end either. Because the Ravens might have an opportunity to get out from under Andrews and just live with Isaiah Likely going forward.
And like Dalton Kincaid's like the opposite thing, right? It's just that he's not getting any targets because they're not throwing the ball. And so that's, that whole argument of who's the wide receiver 1 or who's the receiver 1 in Buffalo, that question may be moot. It may not matter.
Yep, 100%. All right. That'll do it. Joel, great show, buddy.
Yeah, good stuff.
This is your friendly reminder. Check out our friends over at Trophy Smack, trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. Use that unique link. Do all of your shopping needs for your achievement-based awards, trophies, belts, championship rings, decorative wall art, which, you do actually see some stuff behind Joel. I still live in a prison office, and look at the fancy belt. Look at that. And hey, you know what? You buy one of those, use code WOFF, WOFF at checkout. When you go to trophysmack.com/WOFF, you get yourself a free championship ring. Go get that bling, baby. Go get that bling. And once again, our partnership with Dynasty Nerds. DynastyNerds.com. Use promo code CLUBFANTASY at checkout and save yourself 15% on a membership. They have their trade calculator, their all-22 film room for scouting all the incoming prospects, as well as their very active Discord. Once again, DynastyNerds.com. Use promo code CLUBFANTASY. Save 15% at checkout. All right. If you have not already, like and subscribe. Do all those great things on our YouTube page as we continue that march on up the subscriber rankings. If you're listening over on any of the podcast feeds, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart. Give us a follow. Rate us, please. That goes a long way towards helping us continue to grow and hit those algorithms as well. You can follow Joel at the Joel Wirth. You can follow myself at the One Hudsonian all across the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And of course, Club Fantasy. That's at Club Fantasy FFL on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as YouTube. Always remember, Dynasty is like a disco ball. It keeps on spinning year round. So join the club every Thursday night. I think 9 o'clock is going to be our time on Thursdays. I think that's a good time.
I like it.
Chat seems to be active, so I think that'll be where it's at.
Chat's been on fire all week long, so
I love it.
Shout out to them.
Absolutely love it. So we'll see everybody next week. Peace out.